European leaders clash over migration at a heated EU summit as hundreds of migrants are rescued off the coast of Libya. How a New York church became a place of worship for Muslims. And bring on the Southern Ocean. The Volvo Ocean Race leaves South Africa to face the planet's most dangerous seas. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. 2 years after the Mediterranean migrant crisis shook the European Union, a tentative effort by the bloc to patch up differences over a refugee policy has stumbled. A candid discussion of a Brussels summit dinner that began on Thursday night and spilled into the early hours of Friday was intended to clear the air and see if there was a way to reconcile opposing views on how to reform defunct asylum rules. However, leaders emerging from nearly 3 hours of talks made clear that the so-called frank and sober exchanges failed to blunt sharp rifts pitting some eastern states against many of the rest. Divisions over how to share out relatively small numbers of refugees have poisoned relations in the EU. Germany and Italy are among the nations demanding that all countries take in a mandatory share of people requiring asylum. Libyan immigration officials say the Coast Guard has rescued 97 people from the sea off the coast of Tripoli. Authorities say all the people rescued Thursday night, including 21 women and 2 children, were from African nations. The group's destination was Europe. The Libyan Coast Guard rescued 114 migrants on Wednesday night. The United States is suspending aid for much of Somalia's armed forces over corruption concerns. That's according to U.S. military officials. The suspension reflects the Somali military's repeated inability to account for aid items such as food, fuel, and weapons. A State Department official says the pause in aid is being made to ensure that U.S. assistance is being used effectively and for its intended purpose. The officials also say Somali security forces members who are actively fighting al-Shabaab and receiving some form of mentorship from either the U.S. or a third party will continue to receive appropriate assistance. Now, for more insight on this situation between the U.S. and Somalia, VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb joins us live from the U.S. military headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Hello, Carla. Tell us about, yes, this decision. Some people maybe thought, wow, was it a surprise move by the U.S. or what are we hearing from the U.S. side?
Right. Well, officials are saying that this was not a surprise to the Somali government, that the Somali government is actually on the same page as them, wanting to stop the corruption, to keep this a transparent process, because as one U.S. official told me, the U.S. does not want to give aid that's not going where it's intended to go. And we have seen documents by Reuters first reported these documents that the U.S. Sent a team with Somalis to go to different bases, about 9 different bases, and they found out that only about 2 of those actually had the aid and the large amount of food aid that they were supposed to have. They also saw that some of the commanders were kind of writing off troops that were supposed to be there that actually were not there. So they were trying to get additional aid, which never actually made it to the troops themselves. And that's the key sticking point for the United States. This isn't a situation where the United States says it's taking aid away from the people who need it. They say it's quite the contrary. They say that this is a chance for everything to have a clean slate, for them to figure out exactly where the aid is going and make sure that it gets to the people that need it the most, the people who are defending their country against terrorists.
Are there any concerns that this might impact on the fight against the al-Shabaab terrorists?
Yes, there have been concerns in Somalia today, there was a former defense official that said that this would be a big setback to the fight against terrorism. This is also coming at a time when about 1,000 African Union troops are withdrawing from Somalia. So that is another sticky situation that the Somali government says they need as much support as they can right now because they're already dealing with less than normal. But on the flip side, the United States points out that this is also at a time where the U.S. has increased authorities in Somalia. There are about 500 American troops in Somalia, and there have been about 30 strikes conducted this year, a very high number as opposed to last year, against either the Islamic State or al-Shabaab. One of them was just this week that hit a vehicle that was supposed to be laden with explosives set for potentially Mogadishu, and that terrorist attack was prevented by a U.S. strike. And so the U.S. is saying that it has a plan, that it is working with its Somali partners, that every solution in Somalia has to come by, with, and through the Somali forces and the Somali government, but their aid has to come in an effective manner.
Could this reflect a more closer scrutiny of the Trump administration on how U.S. finances are being spent out there on the continent of Africa?
Well, this is a tricky situation, as I said before, because while U.S. military aid in Africa seems to be increasing overall, the State Department budget, if it goes through as the Trump administration wants it to go through, would slash the State Department by a third. That would be critical aid that is intended to go to some African nations, including Somalia. So it's going to be very difficult to square these two contrasting ideas, increasing the military aid while reducing the diplomatic aid, and that includes things as USAID, which provides food to people who are starving and have been dealing with everything from droughts to terrorism there. So it's going to be an interesting next year, we can definitely tell, but it's too soon to predict exactly how this will go. And from the Pentagon side, the U.S. military says that it is prepared and it has the resources available to fight the terrorists and to continue supporting the Somali government and the Somali military.
We appreciate your reporting, Carla. Thank you. That's VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb. Now to Southern Africa, former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe is in Singapore for a medical checkup. This according to a former spokesman. The ousted leader was spotted leaving a Singapore medical facility on Friday. The 93-year-old Mugabe had not been seen in public since his resignation after last month's military takeover that ended his 37-year reign. Mugabe is accused of brutal repression and bringing Zimbabwe to economic ruin. He has been in increasingly frail health and has reportedly battled prostate cancer. Mugabe will miss the ZANU-PF party's annual conference in Harare on Friday, when his replacement, President Emmerson Mnangagwa, is expected to be confirmed as its candidate for elections next year. U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is joining members of the United States Security Council on Friday to discuss putting maximum pressure on North Korea to abandon its nuclear weapons program, just days after he expressed a willingness to begin talks with Pyongyang without preconditions. Tillerson is also meeting with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Friday. North Korea was high on the agenda in the meeting between Guterres, who was visiting Tokyo on Thursday, with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Guterres reiterated UN Security Council resolutions on sanctions against North Korea's nuclear and missile programs and needed to be fully implemented by all countries. Now, the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees equal rights to all places of worship, be it a church or a mosque. In the U.S. city of Syracuse, New York, a church is as important to Muslims as it has been to Christians. VOA's Sabah Shakhan takes us to this house of God.
The skyline in this inner-city neighborhood of Syracuse, New York, is pierced by the spires of a red brick building, crescents having replaced crosses, staring toward the heavens. This building is now known as Masjid Isa ibn Maryam, or the Mosque of Jesus, Son of Mary. Until 4 years ago, it was called the Holy Trinity Church. Walk inside, and a verse from the Quran engraved in wood reads, "Allah will forgive everyone, regardless of their sins."
I always say that these walls are waiting to hear the Quran for 100 years, and that's kind of the sense I had right from the very beginning.
Yusuf Soul has been a part of this church-to-mosque journey from the beginning. He admits it was not easy to hear Islam's call to prayer, the Adhan, echoing a church.
There are some people who were very angry and upset. People who I never saw before were angry at me personally, because people put me a little bit in front, being an American.
Built in the early 20th century, Holy Trinity served a growing population of German and Italian immigrants. Many were baptized, married, and buried there. But changing demographics doomed Holy Trinity. Parishioners moved from the city to the suburbs, replaced by a new wave of immigrants and refugees, many of whom were Muslim.
We broke bread with many different groups, and eventually they were at peace and at ease with the idea of this becoming a mosque.
In 2010, the Roman Catholic Diocese of Syracuse closed the church as part of a regional reconfiguration. Although others were willing to pay 3 times the price to turn the church into a bar, it was sold to a Muslim group for much less money, so God could still be worshipped in a house of God. And then the rehabilitation of the building started. Pews were removed, its wood used to fix the floor. Thousands of crosses on the walls were redesigned or painted over. The crosses on the spires were replaced and saved as precious reminders of the building's past.
We still need to raise some funds and replace those lights, because it is a bit dark in here.
This mosque is different than others in the area because there is not a separate room or wall separating men and women. There is no designated imam or a person to call for the prayers. The idea is the mosque belongs to everyone, and anyone can call for or lead the prayer. Even 14-year-old Sajjad Samir from Afghanistan.
I always practice with myself, and people in the mosque encouraged me to give azan. And I started giving azan for like a few days.
Refugees from several countries live near this mosque, but it serves a community beyond just the Muslims.
So they really do see themselves as serving the entire neighborhood, from a food pantry open to all, to picnics and summer events and other things. So they really are wonderful community partners who want to serve the entire community, not just the members, the Muslim community locally.
Yusuf Soul says, do not believe everything you see in the media, because contrary to some perceptions, America has an incredible amount of welcoming people who embrace diversity and love people for who they are. Sabah Shah, VOA News, Syracuse, New York.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now coming up, leg 3 of the Volvo Ocean Race. Stay with us.
This is BizBeat.
California's Sonoma and Napa valleys are trying to lure tourists back to the region while they recover from October wildfires that killed 40 people and burned down 9,000 homes. Frank Fagoni is the owner of Fagoni's Olive Oil Company.
It's had a tremendous financial impact on us.
At Cafe La Haya, Saul Grotman says amongst the devastation, there's still much to see and do.
Nobody should be afraid to come back and visit and see the beauty that surrounds us here.
And most of the 1,200 wineries around the region were unaffected. Chairman of Napa Valley Vintners, Michael Honig.
It was really more the impact that the fires had on people's psyche, in the sense that they thought the Napa Valley was burning, so they canceled their trips. And that's really been the most impact for us.
Meantime, the wine is flowing and business is open, and the state's Tourism Commission is spending $2 million on ad campaigns. For VOA's BizBeat, I'm Philip Alexio.
Welcome back. The Southern Ocean is where legends of the worldwide Volvo Ocean Race are made and where the fleet is headed next. VOA's Caroline Turner has more.
Upon the Volvo Ocean Race arrival to Cape Town, Mapfre and Vestas were in the lead. While in port, South Africans enjoyed the up-close races where Dongfeng took the lead. Sailors took part in the Ocean Summit, an event that brings together business, science, politics, and sports. The race is part scientific expedition in that teams collect samples for scientific research on plastic pollution and the health of the oceans. Local township students took advantage of the educational events. After a few weeks of rest, it was time for the 7 professional teams to face their biggest challenge yet. Leg 3 from Cape Town to Melbourne, Australia, about 6,500 nautical miles. With the stormy forecast, the teams were braced to feel the full power of nature in the most remote place on the planet.
Well, better brace yourself on, because just the amount of pressure what is in the air is just humongous. And of course then the water temperatures. But just imagine it's 2-3 degrees on deck. Your fingers are frozen because you can't keep your gloves on. And sometimes it's like a zombie movie. If you just, everything goes in slow motion. But it is, I sometimes have to laugh about it because it's crazy what we do.
Deciding when to push for speed and when to pull back to protect crew and equipment is a delicate balance. The stakes are high with double points for Leg 3. So 4th place team AkzoNobel called on ocean racing legends Alex Pella and Justin Ferris to join the team for the next leg.
For this leg, we tried to focus on to get more heavy downwind helmsmen. So we got Justin and Alex, very well experienced guys, in the offshore racing, and hopefully they are just going to give us that edge with the double points in mind to be on the podium. And that's what we fight for very hard.
6 of the 7 teams have made changes to their crews, rotating in fresh talent to the ranks. All except Vestas, who was sticking with their battle-hardened team. The biggest change is on board Sung Hung Kai Scallywag, where 34-year-old Portuguese native Antonio Fontes takes over the crucial role of navigator.
It's a major opportunity for me, obviously. As Steve stepped down from the team, there was this gap, and I was the reserve sailor, so they called me to do this job. I will learn a lot. I'm learning already a lot, and it will be awesome.
Another young sailor stepping up is Dongfeng Race Team's Fabian Delahaye. He got the call just hours before the start after Daryl Weissling was forced to drop out due to a back injury. Cape Town's iconic Table Mountain set the stage for Sunday's start as the 6,500 nautical mile leg to Melbourne got underway. The famed Cape Doctor, as the strong southeasterly wind is known, launched the fleet off the start line in 20 to 25 knots of wind and passed the southernmost point of Africa. Race leaders Mapfre and Dongfeng Race Team were neck and neck through the final start gate off Cape Town, leading the fleet south.
Good weather to start a new leg. Got 5 knots of wind, and the wind right now should decrease for all the night.
We will have a beautiful sunset on the Cape of Good Hope, but it's a bit bumpy.
The fleet rounded the Cape of Good Hope where the Indian and South Atlantic Oceans meet, and they are on their way to the Melbourne finish. Carolyn Turner, VOA News.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. VOA's Heather Maxwell introduces us to New Desert Rock by Kela Su. You'll want to hear this. Don't go away.
La tâche de suivre et de les transmettre à la chambre jusqu'au bout.
This is Goldfinger Studio, and inside there's a session in progress by a trio called Kela Su. It's led by a singer, guitarist, songwriter, Anana Haruna.
Yes, go.
Well, from Brussels, Heather Maxwell now lands here in studio, joins me to tell us more about her time with the Tuareg rock band Kella Souf and its new music.
Yes.
First, I like the name, Kella Souf. What does that mean?
That means those with nostalgia.
Oh, like me, right?
Oh, you too, huh?
I think I am. I got a nostalgia. So tell us a little bit how it was like being in that session, you know?
Oh, that was great. I mean, it's always great to be in a live studio session with musicians, no matter who they are almost. But this was really special because it's a new formation of that group. They used to be a bigger band, and so now they're trying a new album with just a trio.
Yeah.
So it was, I think it was their first day in the studio, and they were trying out this new sound, and it was so beautiful. And Anana, the lead singer, sings with such emotion. It was really actually very.
I was trying to, you know, I look at them as you were talking to them, trying to figure out where are they from. They're not from the same country, right?
No, they're not. Anana, the leader, is from Niger, but when he was 12, he had to leave the country and go to Libya because of the political problems there. And then Sofiane, I believe, is from Tunisia. North Africa.
Yeah, but their music, all these people from these different countries have a certain common kind of genre of music, right? The Tuareg people.
Well, yes. The Tuareg people have this really strong tradition that crosses national borders, for sure. And the guitar, even though it's a newer instrument, as he's explaining in this interview, the guitar came in with rebellion in the 1990s and 80s and 90s, so it's a new instrument. But Tuaregs used to play another string instrument just like it, a traditional one. So they took the guitar and they play it like they play the traditional one, and it creates this beautiful sound that sounds a lot like rock and roll. So it's it's a perfect marriage for creating new kind of edgy desert sounds. That's why they call it desert rock.
So there's some beauty about desert. I'm sure there's some certain sounds that really inspire them. But what did they say now, being like in a place like Brussels, they're making music there? What inspires them?
He says, well, Anana is the singer and the songwriter, so he creates all the songs. And he draws a lot on his past, his nostalgia, in fact. And his mission in music is to promote Tuareg culture. And so I think he's drawing mostly on what he remembers. Traditional stuff, but then he draws from, you know, other rock musicians that he really likes that are not from that area.
Okay, and the language though they sing in?
Tamashek.
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 So that is also a language spoken in bigger part of that that area.
The Tuareg. That's the language of the Tuaregs.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure you didn't understand much of it. Just
not
like
too much.
So I think now let's just watch the video and see what you know we can get out of the music of this guy.
This video is from their last album with the full band, and the Camel in Brussels is awesome.
Let's watch it. Let's get them in.
All right.
Now, you can feel the nostalgia, but I think that is cool.
It is,
There is a camel in the middle of the city in Brussels. How did they get it there?
I don't know. I meant to ask them that, but I didn't get the time.
They'll tell us next time.
Okay.
So, Heather, thank you very much
My
for
pleasure.
yet another fantastic Music Maker segment. Now, to learn more about Heather Maxwell and our VOA radio show, visit Facebook and type in the keywords Music Time in Africa, and you can see what time our program can be heard in your area and get more information about some of our featured artists. Well, I want to end our show today with more of the sounds from the touring rock band Kela Souf. Until next time, good night from all of us here in Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A cannon used to be a common military weapon.
Loose cannon.
So, are Anna and Jonathan talking about an old battle?
Hey, I'm looking for someone to host a political event tomorrow night. Can your friend Sylvia help out?
Sylvia? She's a loose cannon. You never know what she's going to say. She could easily offend everyone in the